Hi, everyone. Welcome to the room. Give everyone a little time to filter in. Thank you so much for joining us. It's just about the afternoon here on the East Coast. I know it's pretty early out on the West Coast. So for those of you who are joining us from the West Coast, good morning. For those on the East Coast, good afternoon. And for those in the middle of the country, good morning, afternoon-ish. I'm going to give a few more minutes for people to filter in before we kick off this great panel and I introduce these fantastic panelists that we have for you all today. So a few more minutes. All right, a few more seconds, that is. Let's get started. My name is Brian Underwood, and I am the Beauty and Wellness Director of Oprah Daily and the Director of Beauty Partnerships here at Glam Hive. And I'm really excited to be speaking with you all today on a panel called Face Value, where we're gonna have the experts dishing on the wackiest skincare trends. I feel like social media has given birth to some of the craziest skincare trends that I've seen, and we have the best of the best, two incredible board certified dermatologists and two fabulous licensed estheticians and brand founders here joining us today. So before we get started, a few housekeeping notes. This session will be recorded. So if you're not able to join it live, you can view it with your ticket later. And the chat function is open. Just remember, it is public. So please ask your questions in the chat function, and I will hopefully have plenty of time to get to them toward the end of the discussion. And I guess without further ado, I'm going to introduce our fabulous panelists. First is Renee Rouleau, the fantastic Renee Rouleau, who is a celebrity esthetician and founder of her eponymous skincare line, which is an editor favorite, one of my favorites. I love the Mint Renewal Cleanser. Renee, I just reached out to get another bottle. It's so good. I love it. Welcome to the room.
Thank you, Brian. Happy to be here.
Yay. Next up, we have a board certified dermatologist based here in New York City, Dr. Dendy Engelmann. Hi, Dr. Dendy.
Hey, Brian. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to kick this off with you. Next up, we have the incredible Rachel Roth, who is the founder and CEO of Urban Skin RX. We were just talking really a brand, Rachel, that I think was addressing the skin issues of Black and brown folks, before that was a thing that everyone was talking about. So you were one of the first, and I'm so excited to have you here to chat through this with me. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Yep, I'm definitely an OG and super excited to be here and talk about all these amazing subjects.
Well, excited to have you. And last, but by no means least, another of my absolute favorite dermatologists, Dr. Kavita Mariwalla. Hi, Dr. Mariwalla.
Hi, guys. I'm so excited to be here with this amazing panel today.
Yeah, we have some great minds here. And then I should mention and say a huge thank you to our presenting sponsor, Mary Kay. Thank you so much for sponsoring this great day of beauty and style programming, which is going all day. So please hop around to different panels. We have great artists and stylists and makeup artists here talking about everything. So look at the schedule, check it out, and join us for some other panels. So let's cut right to the chase. I feel like when we talk about wacky skincare trends, we're talking about social media, and that really is what is driving a lot of the conversation as it relates to skincare right now. And I'm curious to hear from all of you, whom I consider the real experts in skincare, what your thoughts are about social media as an education tool, because all of you are using your platforms to educate. So I'm just wondering, getting a temperature check in the room about what your thoughts are. Renee, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that social media is such a great way to get education, but it's very challenging to sift through all of it, right? As a consumer, I mean, we're just kind of vulnerable to, or gullible to kind of what we hear. I think, I think it's very, very confusing for the consumer to kind of sort through it all. And you kind of just have to always have your gut check of who you think is knowledgeable. And I'm always, certainly all of us, here have credibility, and we have titles, and we have hands-on experience and that sort of thing. And I think you always need to look at who the expert is and what their area of expertise is. I think there's no shame. I think there's no shame in somebody just who doesn't have expertise other than their own skin, right? I mean, if somebody's just like, hey, I'm your average consumer and I've had acne and these are the things that have worked for me, I think that's really valid. But I think you just have to be very cautious on where who you decide you're going to learn from.
For sure. Dr. Dendy, you and I had a really interesting conversation on Clubhouse a few weeks back. And one of the things that I asked you was, as a dermatologist, a physician, there's certain things that you can and cannot say, and certain things you can, advise people on social media. And can you just talk a little bit about that and how you view using your social platform to educate in regard to skincare and proper skin treatment?
Sure. We as dermatologists, of course, want everyone to have their best skin and have their healthiest skin and protect it. And obviously, being a skin cancer specialist as well, that's a primary concern. And I'm sure Kavita is the same. We get so many DMs and requests and asking for advice on certain things. And if it's like categorically about a specific antioxidant, is that safe, or do you like that? It's easy for us to kind of weigh in. Sometimes patients are like, I'm in my 3rd trimester and I want to try this, and I'm in Hungary and I don't even know the manufacturer of that. Then we have to be really careful, because obviously we have quite a lot of power, and we have to make sure that we are doling out our information both wisely and safely. That said, you and I talked about on Clubhouse where I stood with giving information over the internet and all these verticals. And I do think that everybody on this panel obviously is vetted to do so. And it's kind of our responsibility to help the masses tease out the truth, because there's so much misinformation on the internet today. And we have to be careful, because we obviously want to do no harm. And so I'll be 45 in November. I certainly did not grow up with social media as part of my training. But the residents now, it's just kind of part of what they do. And if you told me 20 years ago that I'd be planning out my weekly posts and, I mean, it's hilarious that that's become just part of the deal. But I do think that we have some obligation to those to help everyone sift out, like Renee said, from the experts. And so when you have the expertise, you should share it. And be mindful of the information, because certainly we do have power to help guide behavior, and we need to be mindful of that.
Yeah, Dr. Mariwalla, you're very active on social media. We've done some Clubhouse discussions together. You're active on Instagram and other platforms. What do you see your responsibility and role on social media as it relates to what you do and skincare advice and education?
I think it's interesting, because as a dermatologist, I'm a physician first, and I see patients all day long. And it's hard to decide, where do you draw the line, because I think that as you give advice, part of you as a dermatologist can also potentially morph into a personality. And as a physician, it's like we're always taught that it's not your personality, right? It's like there's objective findings, there's scientifically data-backed advice that we give. So for me, I think it's really important to actually also educate people on what dermatologists do, but what other experts in skincare do. I find during the pandemic, for example, a panel like this, I love it, because there are things that Renee and everybody's going to talk to you about as an esthetician that I wasn't trained that way. I don't know I know the parts of a facial, but I'm not somebody who that's my sort of bailiwick, right? I'm there to tell you about acne, how to treat it medically. But we forget that the skin is actually the biggest organ that we have in the body. And so if you think about your skin like you would your heart or your liver, you wouldn't just go to any random person to tell you how to treat your heart. But we tend to do that when we talk about skin, and that's where we need to pull it back. So I love these multidisciplinary panels, because I think it actually gives honest advice, and it lets everyone sort of stay in their lane, but give really good education.
That's great. It's a great point. And Rachel, I'm going to kick this to you as, you know, in that world, the aesthetic world, and as a brand founder, how are you using your platform and your brand's very unique position in the market right now to educate specifically about issues as they relate to skin of color?
I think, you know, to Dr. Is it Mariwalla? Am I saying that right? Okay, sorry, I don't want to butcher her name. You know, I think it's always leading with being an esthetician or a doctor prior to being a brand owner. And as long as you stay true to that, I think that, you know, you will be a resource to people. So, you know, I was one of the first brands really to specialize in clinical skincare for deeper skin tones. And now that I've built up this larger platform as other emerging brands are finally coming into this category, which is, you know, amazing, I have an opportunity to use my platform to, you know, really be a resource to send people out to other physicians, dermatologists, because, you know, we get questions all the time about, like, will your products work for dark spots from ingrown hairs? And I'm going to always stick to, well, yeah, but you really need to solve the underlying issue first, which is laser hair removal, you know. And so helping them be this resource of, you know, this is what you need. My products will be there to help fade the post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation after the laser hair removal. But let me tell you about the type of laser you need. And let me tell you how you can check to see, you know, if somebody who has that laser knows how to properly skin type you, because just because you have the right laser doesn't mean they know how to operate it correctly. So, you know, it's, for me, I'm just kind of like this middleman, and sticking to that, I think, has really helped my win over a consumer that for many years wasn't trustworthy, was like, you know, I don't know who to trust. So by not leading with buy this product and it will solve all your issues, but leading with education first and being that resource. So even if I don't get the sale right then and there, they will eventually come back to me or refer somebody. I'm not sure if that entirely answered your question.
No, it did. But, and I love what you said about leading with your experience. And I think you and Renee both have the opportunity to do that. But before you had brands, you were real skincare experts with the receipts to sort of back that up. So I think it's a very valid point. And, you know, you bring up this point of trust and who to trust. And I agree. I think people are really confused about what they're seeing on social media. Dr. Mariwalla, what do you think the role of a quote unquote traditional influencer is? And by that, I mean someone who does not have the training that you and the other panelists have, you know, because they're out there and they're going to be a, you know, persisting source of information for people. What do you think is the role that they can play in this conversation?
You know, I think that's a really good question. And I just want to touch on one thing that Rachel was saying, because I have so much respect for both Rachel and Renee, because again, these are women who are in the trenches. They're not telling you what to use on your skin from some like ivory tower cosmetic lab, right? Like they have used these on people, they get it. So I think the role of the influencer really is baked into the name. So I like the women on this panel. I follow their accounts. I like to see what they're doing. The same way that I like to flip through glossy, beautiful pictures in a magazine. I think a pocketbook looks great. Maybe I want to buy it. That's how I am influenced. So we're going from print, which we're used to suddenly now that print sort of ad is actually interactive. So you have to remember that it's still an ad. Like it's still, I'm being influenced by this person. And celebrity, instead of being somebody who you could never meet, you're almost like invited into their life and you feel like you could know them. That's where I think the line gets blurred, because suddenly it's like, this isn't just some photo in a print magazine that you know that's been edited. It seems like this is what they look like and this is what their life is like. And that's where it gets confusing. So that's where I think the roles changed. But I do think there's a spot for it, right? Like I want to know about what the latest mascaras are. I want to know what's the Dior makeup line. I want to know the new Chanel colors. And if I'm not looking at print and I'm seeing it in my feed, I don't mind that. I like to see what other people are doing.
That's a great point, Dr. Mariwalla, this idea of trend and really looking at the marketplace from a bigger picture, I think is something that influencers are able to do. Renee, I see you shaking your head. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think you know, I think the reality is there is aspiration, right? And then there's always that, like, I actually just saw something on this morning on social media where someone was calling out for kind of, you know, recommending products like that were really expensive, like, oh, must be nice to be able to afford that, you know? And I think that, you know, it's very hard to, you know, you kind of can never win, right? Like, I mean, it's, you know, I just think that it's challenging, I think, for influencers to be able to share what they like, but then not getting ridiculed because if someone can't fit it, you know, fit that in their budget. But
Yeah.
I always feel like, as an esthetician with me, right, getting a skincare treatment is a luxury oftentimes, right? It's a nicety, not a necessity. But people choose to allocate their dollars how they want to, right? So you know, I can't tell you how many times you know, a client walked in and, you know, she looked very rich and had the Gucci bag or whatever, but ended up being pretty frugal. And then you get the person who's, you know, whatever, you know, like someone that, whatever. I remember once I had like a female cop, you know, and she ended up being like this huge spending client, but it was because, yeah, I mean, but she prioritized how she spent her money, right? We all have passions, all have hobbies, and we allocate our funds. And so I think that, you know, people need to be a little forgiving of people that when they're sharing their experiences and what they like, you know, it's just their experience. And, you know, I think people need to give them a little grace because people can choose how to spend their money how they want to. And, you know, expensive brands, mass brands, I mean, it runs the gamut, but it's your choice.
Sure. It's great point for sure. All right. So let's get into the nitty gritty. Slugging. So apparently slugging is when you sort of smear your face in some sort of very occlusive agent like petroleum jelly. So look, I've heard about this as a great treatment for your feet, and I've done it. You know, you put Vaseline or Aquaphor or whatever on your feet, you put socks on, your next morning your feet look great. On your face, Dr. Dendy, is this a good idea? What are your thoughts here?
I do not think this is a great idea. I would say that we know that occlusive agents like petrolatum or petroleum jelly can be comedogenic. And, you know, the concept is this is like a deep cleanse, right? That was how it's kind of presented. And clearly people who are interested in cleaning their skin often have acne or blemish prone skin. Right. And then you're putting an occlusive agent on there that may exacerbate that condition. So it's kind of the exact opposite potential effect. And so I think this is one of those flash in the pans where it's like, have you heard about this? You know, it's very viral worthy because it's so crazy, but I don't think it holds its salt as far as being vetted in science.
Gotcha. Dr. Mariwalla, you hear though all the time, and I've written stories about this, that, you know, when you're looking for moisturizer, you want to look for humectants, emollients, and occlusives. So it feels like occlusives do serve some purpose in skincare, right? Is it just like too much of a good thing, maybe?
So I actually think it's interesting because getting back to my whole concept of like your skin is a living, breathing organ. Your skin evaporates water at all different times of the day. So, and that's called transepidermal water loss, super technical. But it also follows a circadian rhythm, believe it or not. So your skin is going to lose more water during the day than it does at night. And so there's a reason why we say do some actives at night versus the day, because when your skin is losing less water, it's actually, you can use the powers of its own hydration to drive things into your skin, which is why we love actives at night. And so when you're thinking about putting an occlusive on at night, your skin's not really like losing that much water. So it sort of doesn't make sense in terms of the circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
You want to do a sheet mask, go for it. You know, the one thing that happens is a lot of people use humectants alone at night. And remember that humectants are going to draw water from all sources. So you can end up getting a little bit of a drier skin if you're only using like a hyaluronic acid at night alone.
Yeah.
It's not a simple question, but it's like thinking about the biology of the skin. But that's also why I like during the day makes a lot of sense because again, you're working with your skin's natural organ, homeostasis there.
Got it. Rachel, what is in your view and in the products that you formulated for the brand? We're talking now, we've sort of segued into sort of nighttime skincare. What is your thought there? And what are the products that you recommend, from your brand and just in general at night? Rachel, I think you're muted.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Just to touch on the last thing is, I do think occlusives have a place in skincare. Going back to like post-treatment procedures. I don't want people to think that like there is no role in occlusives, but I think it just has to be used kind of like selectively for what is going on with your skin at the moment, but they can serve a great purpose depending on what your skin is going through, but it shouldn't be done daily, nightly, continuously. And there's also some ingredients like squalene that can be an occlusive, or like shea butter where it's a better alternative if you do need an occlusive. But in terms of nighttime regimen, I'm sure like Renee, we'll talk about this more later, but I'm like retinol till you die. Like, a retinol is, all things key for the majority of people wanting to improve the appearance of their skin, whether or not it's acne, large pores, fine lines. It just is that one ingredient that kind of does it all. So I'm a big fan of a retinol for my patients, but choosing the right one. And then also, really educating people about the different ways that you can use retinol, because it can be irritating, whether or not you put your moisturizer on first and then put a retinol on top, or, there's just so many tools and people are so scared of using it because of different interactions they've had. So I think it's all about educating the consumer about all the different types of retinols and the different ways you can play around with it. But I'm a big retinol fanatic.
And do you recommend sort of using something after your retinol to kind of?
So I'm actually really, so there's been this hype with, I like to call it bakuchi oil. I know it might be baku oil. I don't know anymore at this point. I just like to call it bakuchi oil. And so I think, bakuchi oil, which is like known as this retinol alternative, actually can be really great used with retinol. So, there's people who use it because they're pregnant and they can't use retinol, or, just for whatever which reason. But I actually feel like, combining it with a retinol can actually somewhat make your retinol more tolerable. So I'm a big fan of our retinol resurfacing treatment pads, which can have that traditional like flaking and a little bit of inflammation the first 2 to 3 weeks of use. But by putting our new Ready Glow resurfacing oil on top, which is just bakuchi oil, I find that people have an easier time during that transition period.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up. I actually just met with a brand yesterday that had a product with both of those ingredients in it. So I think you're going to be seeing more of that. So another trend, Renee, I know you're going to have very strong opinions about this one, and I certainly do, is sunscreen highlighting. I feel like this was a thing, and then Gwyneth Paltrow did that whole sort of, how she applied her sunscreen as almost like a highlighter. This is like a terrible idea, right?
But it got her a lot of press, so mission accomplished probably in her mind. So yeah, it was silly. Anyone, skincare is all about common sense, right? And, a lot of times we make things so overcomplicated or whatever, and you kind of really have to use common sense. So I'm hoping that people use common sense with that one and realize that, that's not the way to use it. So yeah, that was silly, but it certainly created a lot of conversation, and hopefully good conversation about, hey, let's not follow this advice. So yeah, and the thing about sunscreen, I think it's so important is, as an esthetician, everyone's wants like the miracle product for me. What's your best firming cream, and what's your, and it's just like all day long, sunscreen is the #1 most biologically active product to, slow down the visible signs of aging for your skin. And so it's like, I always educating people on proper application, educating them really what the numbers mean, chemical versus physical. I have a blog post on chemical and physical sunscreens. It's one of our top blog posts. And, just making sure they get that right, because nothing else you do with all your quote unquote magic creams and serums is going to make a big difference if you don't nail that perfectly and really understand that. And a big part of that also is the neck, right? Most people will take sunscreen, they'll put it on their face, and then whatever is left over, they'll like, oh, I'll put some on my neck, but it's put on there so sheer, it's not doing anything. And so proper sun protection is super important.
So Renee, Dr. Denny, Renee brings up that post about mineral versus chemical sunscreens is one of her most popular. And I think it doesn't surprise me. I think people have lots of questions about sunscreen and they're confused about sunscreen. From your perspective, when you're talking about mineral versus chemical, I know a lot of dermatologists I speak to say that they really recommend mineral sunscreens with zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. Do chemical sunscreens have a place in this world of skincare right now?
That's such a tough one. I feel like I'm going to get in trouble by industry. But I love the way Renee articulated the importance of the SPF. And I feel like it's one that every skin expert touts and tries to drive home. And for whatever reason, everyone's like, yeah, but what else? You know, they're like, I know, but I don't want to hear it's like not sexy. And people are like, you know, if you never have the wrinkle, you don't have to correct it later. You know, we always talk about that. And I'm from down south where we say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. You know, like if you just do this beforehand, you'll never have to really do all the corrective measures. That said, I feel like almost every dermatologist really does prefer physical sunscreens versus chemical for multiple reasons. One, the effectiveness; two, the tolerability. The challenge has been historically as a cosmetic chemist to formulate them to be cosmetically elegant. And with the white cast that some of the physical blockers can, or the graying or kind of like changing the hue of the color, that's of the skin, that's been the challenge. That said, I feel like there are some beautiful formulations that have now been made where they either coat the zinc oxide or titanium dioxide particles and have this really amazing science to make them more cosmetically elegant. I'm thinking specifically to like Skin Better. They've made those like very nice high SPF, fully mineral sunscreens that are well tolerated throughout all skin tones, which I think is great. So that is very long-winded to say that I think we're getting to the point where we may not need chemical because we've kind of conquered the one limitation that had been keeping everyone from formulating with them. And we're finding ways around that. And I think that that's really important.
Yeah, Rachel, Dr. Dendy brings up a good point, which is this sort of barrier to use of mineral sunscreens for people of color who just assume it's going to sort of discolor their skin, leave a sort of gray cast on their skin as a brand catering to darker skin tones. What has your journey been like in that regard?
God, I would say it's dominated my career. I've spent 10 years formulating a physical sunblock that goes on sheer to what I like to say the full true spectrum of skin tones, because you know, although the industry's come very far, and I've seen it especially in the last year, I would say this last year has been the most noticeable for, you know, releases of mineral sunblocks that say this is great for all skin tones. But in all reality, the most popular skin tone we might associate with like deeper skin complexions, like a brown or a dark brown, doesn't always include the deepest of deepest, like more exotic, like darker skin tones. And so that's been my life mission, of especially a brand that is, you know, we are all about inclusivity. And so how can I truly have a great sunblock if it is, you know, leaving out anybody? And it has been no easy task, let me tell you. And I've for a long time been like, you know, I've screwed up. I should have just compromised. You know, I've been selling this chemical sunblocks, you know, which I don't fully believe in, although I am an advocate for the best sunblock, you know, is the one that you wear. Like wearing a sunblock is better than no sunblock. So it's just about finding one you love and committing to wearing it, reapplying it, putting it on correctly. But I've had this internal conflict, like, shit, I should just compromise 2 or 3 years ago, been like, you know, even if it doesn't include this color, you know, this really, really deep skin tone, at least I'm hitting the masses of skin of color. And I'm proud to say I stuck with it. And in June, I'm releasing a 13% zinc oxide that I feel wholeheartedly like confident goes on sheer to the deepest of deep skin tones.
That's great.
You know, I am like Dendy. I do hope that we reach a day, and I hope I'm part of it this year, where we don't need chemical sunblocks.
Yeah. That's great. Well, we have a question actually from the audience, from Megan. Dr. Mariwalla, I'm going to direct this one to you to start. The question from Megan is, what about blue light protection with physical sunscreen? So blue light is something that's getting a lot of attention lately. Can you sort of give us a little update as to sort of where we are with blue light and what we know about blue light and how it affects your skin and what you can do about it?
Yeah, definitely. It's actually so funny. Renee and I were just talking about this on this session that we did on Instagram Live. So I want to go over 2 pieces of data that were recently released. Blue light is part of the rainbow, and that's what you actually visibly see. So when we're using sunscreen, we're using it against light that we don't actually see. It's ultraviolet. You actually get more blue light going outside than you ever would with a computer screen. They recently released, like I think a month ago, a study where they looked at 15 patients. They sat in front of high LED blue light emitting screens for 8 hours a day for 5 days. And then they looked at, how much damage the blue light coming from their screens actually do. Turns out not a lot. It didn't really increase any markers that would be associated with skin cancer. However, blue light emitted from your screens will worsen hyperpigmentation. So if you are a woman of color or not, and you have melasma, you get a lot of freckling, you notice that you have maybe scars or acne scars, they can get darker from sitting in front of these high emitting LED things. So your computer screen, your phone. But here's the thing. You want to wear sunscreen, but you can't just wear any sunscreen. You have to wear a tinted sunscreen because it turns out the tint is what's actually protecting you from the visible light. All sunscreen will protect you from UV light, but not all sunscreen. The organic filters, the physical filters, they won't do much for visible. So you need that tint, which is like the iron oxides.
Got it.
Here's what else is interesting. Iron oxides are present in most foundations that are tinted. Could go for your regular makeup. I mean, your sunscreen, and then put on like your concealer foundation. But again, you're going to have to do that 2 finger lengths, which is a lot. Sunscreens for blue light protection.
Renee, is this a question that you're getting more often, this sort of topic of blue light? Do you think this is a big discussion that people are interested in learning more about?
Yeah, for sure. I have a blog post that I wrote about that as well. It's funny though, like kind of going back to trends, like it's funny how all of a sudden you'll hear about something like crazy and then all of a sudden you don't really hear about it anymore. So I definitely hear about it less. But there was a while when it was a hot topic, which is why I wrote a blog post about it. But no, I mean, I think at the end of the day, people are, looking, again, about prevention. And if there's some, evil thing that's damaging their skin and that, they want to be aware of it. I think consumers really love education and everyone's so into prevention. I mean, certainly when I started as an esthetician over 30 years ago, we kind of, prevention, anti-aging wasn't even a term, right? And now that's a little bit frowned upon, but I think people are so much into preventing problems than trying to deal with it once they get it. So I think blue light is one of those things that's kind of, sneaking up from us from behind, and we're all guilty of our digital world. And so it's definitely, I think, an important topic.
Dr. Dendy, I think one of the questions I get asked now that we're sort of talking about blue light is, but wait, don't dermatologists and some estheticians use light therapy for certain skin conditions? What's the difference?
Not much, as Kavita kind of quoted with the study, that was what they controlled for and selected out the blue light from the LED. And we use that in acne all the time because it kills the bacteria in the follicle that that contributes to acne. So I kind of agree that was a real hot topic for a bit. And certainly when we all pivoted to digital, like work from home, where we were inundated by screens, it had a moment where I think people were like, let's look at it. And in the ophthalmology literature, it is definitely shown to affect eye health. So you could easily say, okay, well, what else is it potentially being detrimental to? But as Kavita pointed out, like when we're really doing the studies and looking at it, overall, we're talking about overall skin health and inducing skin cancers, there's not a lot of data there. But, for those who do suffer with hyperpigmentation, it's just critical day, night, indoor, outdoor, always to have your physical blocker on and your iron oxide. So I thought that was a great point to bring up.
Great. So next one, skin icing. Exposing your skin to very low temperatures. So Rachel, I've been for some, biologique recherche facials, and that's like a big part of the protocol for BR is cryo sticks and cold. They really believe in cold. Do we know, is there like any evidence or benefit in your opinion to this idea of making your skin cold?
I feel like I've seen evidence, like I've seen it firsthand. I'm definitely a supporter of ice therapy for skincare. I mean, what it does to, kind of the blood capillaries, it really can help with product penetration. It's one of my favorite things to recommend if you're on a trip or you are about to go on a date and you have a protruding swollen pimple. I mean, ice therapy is amazing. And there's even been reports regarding like taking ice on the roof of your mouth and what it can do to like redness, diffusing redness and symptoms of rosacea on your face. So I don't know if it doesn't get enough press because it's free and people can, if they do a little bit of research, they can kind of do some therapy.
You don't want people to know about free things.
But gosh, I think ice is an amazing therapy for the skin. I believe in it.
Renee, do you use hot and cold in your protocols? Is that part of what you do?
Yeah, I do. So I'm a big fan. I mean, it all boils down to circulation, right? Yeah. So I'm a big circulation girl. And so from a personal experience, like at night, I hang my head upside down on the side of my bed for 2 minutes just to bring blood to my face. I have compression pants at home and I do compression for my legs. I do cryotherapy for my body. So I'm all about whatever you can do to kind of boost that circulation. In the treatment room, a lot of times I will make ice cubes and out of one of my toners, which is an essence called Moisture Infusion Toner, and I will actually freeze those into ice cubes and then put it on people's skin. And I think the theory, but again, it's all about, as Rachel said, it's all about capillary activity, right? You're constricting, you're dilating. And I just think anytime you're kind of pushing blood through the face, I think that's really important. I think the idea with when you're constricting capillaries, when you're freezing the skin, it creates kind of a vacuum. And so perhaps there's some theory that, as the capillaries constrict, it kind of sucks in. And so maybe there's a little bit more absorption that's happening. But in general, I just think, heat and cold, just anything to kind of get blood flowing and bring new nutrients to the skin cells and oxygen, I'm a big fan of.
Right. Another big one that we've heard a lot about recently is skinimalism. I feel like this is one I could get behind. It's about a very sort of pared back skincare routine. Dr. Mariwalla, in your opinion, what are the essential elements to a good at-home skincare regimen? And are they skinimalist?
I think it's a word that everyone's liking to use, but I really think it's sort of like we went through this year of nothing. And so now are we going to go back? Like, am I going back to heels and fancy dresses and all makeup? I don't know that I want to do that. So I'm going to call it something like minimalism and go for that. So I think the same thing's happening in skincare trends. I like to tell people, you know what, after the year that we just went through, do what feels good for you. But if you're going to be a minimalist, do certain sort of 3 buckets. Figure out how to protect. So that's your sunscreen. Figure out something that's going to repair. So that could be your retinol. It could be an acid. I'm with Rachel, retinol all day, every day. And I sort of like this whole bakuchiol and retinol combo that might be coming out. And then I think that you want to do something that's an active, and that active changes. Like sometimes you're having really bad acne. Sometimes you're having hyperpigmentation. So I think skinimalism is really about being sort of flexible. And then you want to have a cleanser, and that cleanser doesn't have to be crazy, right? Like it can be like a bar of a pH balanced cleanser. So to me, it's like you just got to clean your face, you got to put some sunscreen on, and pick something that's going to repair and be inactive, and you're done.
Gotcha. Dr. Dendy, anything to add, or are you sort of right there as well?
No, I agree that, you know, we see all these trends and you write about them all the time in your magazines, and we go from like K-beauty with like the more steps the better to like, let's pare back. And I do think that we should have some non-negotiable verticals that are essential.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you can play with it. I mean, I'm never going to be a skin minimalist. I'm not that girl, but maybe I am to somebody in Korea. I don't know, you know, because so we just find what works. But you know, part of our job is also always testing new things. And so I think that that's kind of induced this like multi-step process for me. But I also love skincare. I mean, I'm sitting here, we just moved in. Speaking of like not a skin minimal, I'm like stocking the house. We just got this new house and I'm putting it, and I'm literally going to be, any guest who comes, I'm going to give them a gift bag and be like, please take some of this with you.
Right. Rachel, you did bring up retinol first. And I always like to say, I feel like skincare is a marathon, not a sprint. It's about consistency. And it's about using products regularly. Where these ancillary products you think of, like a nice mask or something, you know, sheet mask or a clay mask, whatever it is, where do you think those products kind of fit into a good skincare regimen, would you say?
Yeah, I think masks do have a role in skincare. You know, I think that we all have these very specific, like regular skin types and skin concerns. Like, say, for example, I am normal to dry, and my main concern is my melasma and aging. Okay, so that's me every day. But do I get pimples? Do sometimes my skin, you know, deal with post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation? I mean, just as an example. So I think that these add-ons can be a great tool to enhance the regimen as it changes. So I definitely do think that, you know, it's great if you can afford to have them and you're going to put the time in to have like your little tools that you need as necessary as your skin changes with the elements or, you know, your hormones, anything that can happen.
Amazing. All right. Well, this flew by because it was such an interesting conversation. So we probably have time for one more question. Renee, I'm going to let you kick this one off because I think this is the one that everyone really wants to know, which is, as this amazing skincare expert that you are, if you could only use 3 products for the rest of your life forever, what would these products be?
Okay, so my personal 3 favorites, I mean, and you know, like Dendy, I'm a beauty junkie, so how can you even say that? But
I'm asking you a blasphemous question, I know.
Yes. So first is, I'm kind of a lip balm addict. So, you know, I always have to have lip balm on my lips. So I chose the Bite Beauty Agave Lip Mask. I'm also a big dry shampoo girl, and I like the pharmacy Batiste, you know, you can just buy at the drugstore, the Batiste dry shampoo. And also somebody who has pink hair, but you know, as my roots are growing in, it's really white. And so it can kind of like not make my look, you know, my roots look as dark in between highlights. And then the third, I'll give a Renee Rouleau skincare product shout out, but one of our best-selling masks, so speaking of masks, is Rapid Response Detox Mask. And the problem I looked to solve when I created it was, how can we address acne in a non-drying way? So it's like a great hydrating, non-drying acne mask for a lot of times for adult acne that still have barrier damage and still need the hydration, but it's just a great problem-solving mask for a lot of people. So those are my 3.
Amazing. I love that lip balm made your list, Renee. That was a surprise to me for you.
I panic when I don't have it on my lips. Like sometimes I've even been known because I have oily skin. I've even been known, if I don't have it, I'll take the oil from the sides of my nose and I'll put it on my lips just to give me something.
So there is that old wives' tale about being addicted to lip balm. Renee is proof that is true. Dr. Mariwalla, how about you?
So I'm gonna have to go with this concealer for my under eye bags, because like, if you know, you know. So it's under eye by It Cosmetics. It's super thick, very high coverage. So if I'm gonna go somewhere and be stranded for the rest of my life, I need that with me. I would do the La Roche-Posay tinted sunscreen. I get a lot of freckles very easily in the sun, so I need that tint, and I feel like it works well with my skin tone. And then my last thing would be Vaseline, because I feel like it's really multifactorial. You can use it for a lot of things. I feel like you could MacGyver stuff with it. So
when you have a kid, it's the ultimate MacGyver tool. I will attest to that. Rachel, how about you? Top 3.
You know, like her, I think a great concealer, you know, for a blemish under eyes is key. I've hunted and tried so many, and I always come back to the NARS Radiant concealer. You know, I'm aging, dealing with fine lines, so anything that like doesn't tend to sit in my fine lines and look cakey is amazing. Also suffered from, you know, skin cancer off and on my whole life, and have to say I stay out of the sun, but I love a radiant glow every day, not just during the summer. It makes me feel amazing. And the Jergens foam is like, you never look orange. It's like you can put it on super fast and you tend to not have streaks. So I buy those like 10 at a time. And then, you know, we have over 40 SKUs, and this isn't one that I use every single day. But if I had to pick one that I couldn't live without, it would be my Clear Complexion acne serum, because I cannot stand a pimple. I mean, hyperpigmentation, you can cover it up with like great makeup, but like a protruding pimple, it just is like, and I'll pick it to death. So I'm terrible. I'm a picker. And it's got, you know, a high level benzoyl peroxide, which can be irritating to some, but I put in like arnica and echinacea, some other great ingredients to just kind of combat the inflammation, but it works in like sometimes a matter of a couple hours. So love that product.
Amazing. And Dr. Dendy, I'll kick this one to you, our resident not skinimalist.
Yes, I'm not. This is so hard for me. But I will tell you, I'm sitting here jotting down the other girls' recommendations just so I can buy more things. But mine are boring. I sound like such a derm. Mine are a good antioxidant, a good SPF, and a good retinol. If I could only use 3 products for the rest of my life, you know, protect, prevent, and correct, I think would be the way that I would approach that. So I love SkinCeuticals antioxidants. I love Skin Better. I love Isden for sunscreen. I do love the Skin Better SPFs. I think they're so beautiful. And then I'm a derm consultant for Elizabeth Arden. I love their retinol capsules. I think they're so beautiful and nice. And then I get to cheat that way because they've got ceramides in them too. So I get an extra ingredient in there.
I love it. Well, I'm going to keep you all for just one more minute because we have one question that I want to get to that's a good one. Any tips for good supplements or minerals to take for acne, dark scars, hyperpigmentation, or just generally getting good skin? Dr. Mariwalla, any thoughts?
So let me caveat by saying a lot of supplements are not regulated by the FDA. So be very careful where things are being sourced from. That being said, there's actually really good scientific data for the use of vitamin B3 twice a day to prevent skin cancers in high-risk patients. So as a Mohs surgeon, that's really important, I think, to get that data out there. There are some acne vitamins. There's one called nicotinamide. I actually think it works pretty well. For hyperpigmentation, not really, but I'm also a firm believer in inflammaging and how the process of inflammation speeds up our aging process. So I'm also a really big fan of turmeric with black pepper and taking that on a daily basis.
Can I ask you a question really fast because I'm curious to know your answer? How do you feel about the fad of IV infusion or even oral supplements of glutathione?
That's a great question. Any thoughts from anyone?
This is a really spicy topic, and I'm so glad you brought it up because skin lightening is something that happens across the globe, and it carries with it a lot of sort of political and sort of self-worth feelings with it. And glutathione is something that's not regulated in the United States at all, but it is infused in a lot of spas. And it can lead to brightening and lightening actually of the skin. Long-term use can actually be quite dangerous if it's not regulated. You don't know where that IV bag is coming from. It can lead to things like kidney failure, clotting, blood disorders. So I tell people, if you're having something that's being put into your body and you don't know that that's in a hospital setting or you can't regulate where that sourcing is from, don't do it. There's so many other things that you can get. But I do think a lot of people do use glutathione, and it's marketed as an antioxidant, but truly in a lot of places in the world, it's used as a skin lightener. And as a woman of color, you know, I just have a lot of feelings about that. I'm very pro, like, you know, love the skin you're in, and there's no reason that we should be like hanging on to these colonial tropes of being lighter somehow.
Yeah.
But
Brian, can I ask her one more question? I promise I'm going to keep it
Sure.
short.
Yeah, no, we have some people still sticking around. Other sessions
Mhm.
have started, but we have some people here. So go ahead.
How
I love
do
it. Panelists asking other panelists questions.
How do you feel about oral tranexamic acid?
so for melasma, and I'm sure Dendy, you can talk about this too, it's amazing. I do actually think it works phenomenally well. And we have great data from our colleagues in Singapore and Hong Kong and Korea using it. I like it in the summer months, actually, because that's when all your melasma patients like do terribly. Again, you need to make sure you're seeing a doctor broker sourcing of that. It's a little tough in the United States. I personally make sure my patients don't have any bleeding problems or any, you know, like heavy periods, things like that. But as like something that's actually innovative in dermatology in the fight against melasma, I think oral tranexamic acid is amazing. Topical, meh.
Dr. Dendy, anything to add there to what Dr. Mariwalla was saying?
No, I concur 100%. Just make sure you go to someone who has experience with monitoring it, but it is amazingly effective, not unlike Accutane. You know, we have medicines that are super powerful for changing the skin, but you have to go to someone who knows what they're doing in order to get. What did they say? Can you confirm?
Can you confirm if she said B3 vitamin and turmeric with black pepper for inflammation? Was
That's
that
what she said? B3 for skin cancer protection.
got it?
And
Great.
then black pepper and turmeric for inflammation is what Kavita said.
Any brands,
great.
Dr. Mariwalla? No.
I like, this is one area where I like big box brands because they have a lot of R&D. So to me, the best place to buy vitamins is Costco.
Yeah.
Because be able to sell in Costco or those like big box stores like that, you have to actually go through a ton of vetting, which people don't realize. So that Kirkland's brand is vetted so much, it's kind of shocking. So I like Costco brand vitamins.
Amazing. You heard it here first. Thank you, Dr. Dendy, Dr. Mariwalla, Renee, Rachel. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone who tuned in, and thank you for your great questions, and go to your other sessions, and we'll see you soon. Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye y'all. Bye.